I woke up on a velvet couch, the scent of roses heavy in the air. Candlelight flickered across a neatly set dinner table, expensive wine, 2 untouched plates, and a cake that read, "Happy 3rd anniversary." For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The room was too elegant, too cold. Then my eyes landed on her. Aleena. She stood across from me in a crimson satin dress, arms crossed, her expression as sharp as the heels she wore. Her lips parted, not with a smile, but with words that sliced through the haze like a blade. "Raheel, sign this. We're getting a divorce." It wasn't just the suddenness of her words, it was the fact that I already knew this scene. I'd read it before. In a novel. Raheel, the pitiful male lead. Aleena, the cold-hearted heiress who left him for her ex the moment he returned from abroad. This was their anniversary, the day she ruined him. Except, this time I wasn't Raheel. I had become me inside his body. As she placed a divorce agreement on the table and slid it toward me, I stared at my reflection in the wine glass. Same face from the book. Same heartbreak in his eyes. But not the same soul. 50 lakh, she added curtly. That's more than generous. Sign and we're done. Domi's back now. I don't want to drag this out. Dominic, her true love. The glamorous superstar who once abandoned her during her family's financial crisis, only to return now, when they were back on top. I remembered the plot. In 30 days, she would be in a car crash. She'd lose her leg, her status, her smile. Raheel had stayed by her side, like a fool. But I wasn't Raheel. Not anymore. I picked up the pen slowly. She expected me to beg, cry, demand answers. I didn't. I signed. Her eyes widened just slightly. You're not even going to ask why? No, I said, handing the papers back to her. Because I already know how this ends. She blinked. Excuse me? I stood, straightened my collar, and gave her the faintest smile. You think you're ending the story today, I said quietly, placing the pen down with finality. But I'm just picking up the pen. When your heart is numb, even betrayal feels like business. Aleena sat across from me, back straight, eyes sharp, her fingers wrapped around the stem of a wine glass like it was a weapon. She looked too poised for someone tearing apart a marriage. Then again, I suppose this wasn't heartbreak to her, it was a transaction. And I had just signed my part. I'll have the money transferred tonight, she said, voice smooth and indifferent. 30 lakh should be enough to start over. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. The candlelight flickered across her cheekbones. She was beautiful, no doubt. But cold in a way that chilled the room more than any air conditioner could. 30 lakh. I repeated, pretending to be amused. How kind of you. She didn't flinch. You're not in a position to bargain, Raheel. Be grateful I'm giving you anything at all. I let the silence hang. Let her think she still had control. Then I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Let's talk about positions, shall we? I said casually. You're about to walk out of here and run straight into Dominic's arms. And I'll be a divorced nobody in the entertainment industry until I decide to speak. Her eyes narrowed. Imagine the headlines, I went on, about a top-tier actor sleeping with a married woman. About a powerful heiress funding her lover's comeback while stepping over her husband's pride. The press would eat it up. You wouldn't, she said, but her voice faltered ever so slightly. I would, I replied coolly. Unless, of course, the price of silence is fair. The pause. Then she leaned back, shoulders stiff, and said, 50 lakh. Take it or leave it. I smiled. That's more like it. The waiter arrived just then, setting the bill discreetly on the corner of the table. I stood, brushing imaginary lint off my jacket. As I left the restaurant, I smiled and said, "Oh, and Aleena, don't forget to pay the bill." When your heart is numb, even betrayal feels like business. Aleena sat across from me, back straight, eyes sharp, her fingers wrapped around the stem of a wine glass like it was a weapon. She looked too poised for someone tearing apart a marriage. Then again, I suppose this wasn't heartbreak to her, it was a transaction. And I had just signed my part. I'll have the money transferred tonight, she said, voice smooth and indifferent. 30 lakh should be enough to start over. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. The candlelight flickered across her cheekbones. She was beautiful, no doubt, but cold in a way that chilled the room more than any air conditioner could. 30 lakh. I repeated, pretending to be amused. How kind of you. She didn't flinch. You're not in a position to bargain, Raheel. Be grateful I'm giving you anything at all. I let the silence hang. Let her think she still had control. Then I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. About positions, shall we? I said casually. You're about to walk out of here and run straight into Dominic's arms. And I'll be a divorced nobody in the entertainment industry until I decide to speak. Her eyes narrowed. Imagine the headlines, I went on, about a top-tier actor sleeping with a married woman. About a powerful heiress funding her lover's comeback while stepping over her husband's pride. The press would eat it up. You wouldn't, she said, but her voice faltered ever so slightly. I would, I replied coolly. Unless, of course, the price of silence is fair. The pause. Then she leaned back, shoulders stiff, and said, 50 lakh. Take it or leave it. I smiled. That's more like it. The waiter arrived just then, setting the bill discreetly on the corner of the table. I stood, brushing imaginary lint off my jacket. As I left the restaurant, I smiled and said, Oh, and Aleena, don't forget to pay the bill. The best way to rebuild is to watch everything burn first. Saad opened the door with a toothbrush still hanging from his mouth, blinking like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me standing there, dragging 2 suitcases behind me, he pulled the toothbrush out and muttered, What the hell happened to your anniversary dinner? I walked in without answering, set the bags down with a soft thud, and collapsed onto the couch with a sigh. Divorced, I said plainly. Saad gawked. Wait, what? You were just lighting anniversary candles yesterday. Yeah, and today I lit the marriage certificate on fire. He stared at me for a few seconds longer before snorting. Well, damn, you don't do anything halfway, do you? We had grown up together in the same orphanage, the kind of place where you learn to fight over food and trust only those who bled beside you. Later, we'd scraped our way through college, sharing basements, borrowed clothes, and half-cooked meals. He was the only person who knew the truth about me and Aleena, that it wasn't love, but obligation, that had led to our marriage. I hope you at least took something from her, he added, tossing me a bottle of water. 50 lakh, I said with a small smirk. And peace of mind. Saad raised his brows. Not bad, but you should have aimed higher. I shrugged. I didn't want to stay attached any longer than I had to. Timing was more important than money. He nodded slowly, but the conversation shifted quickly when his phone lit up. He tapped it once, then groaned. You're trending, he said, turning the screen toward me. A glossy image of Aleena and Dominic smiling at a press event filled the display, their hands linked like 2 characters in a fairy tale. The headline screamed, Dominic and Aleena, love rekindled, ex-husband seen leaving alone. The article painted me as the bitter, washed-up actor still clinging to his fading career. I was the unwanted extra in their love story. I took the phone from Saad, scrolled through the comments. Some laughed, others pitted. Most didn't even care who I was. They want a villain? I murmured, opening my laptop with a cold smile. Then let's give them a story they'll never forget. You know the world's gone mad when your heartbreak gets a price tag. The restaurant was one of those trendy rooftop spots with skyline views and glass walls that made the city look like a toy below. Saad and I had come to celebrate the clean break. Divorce, 50 lakh in the bank, no more pretending. It called for good food and overpriced desserts. We were halfway through browsing the menu when a familiar voice sliced through the warm ambience like a rusty blade. Well, if it isn't Raheel. You still like taking things that don't belong to you, huh? I looked up slowly. Dominic stood at our table, tailored to perfection, sunglasses perched on his head though it was already evening. Behind him was Aleena, clinging to his arm like an expensive clutch bag. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were calculating. Dominic smirked and gestured around. Before I went abroad, I used to love this place. That corner table? My favorite. You've got good taste. Shame it's borrowed. I sipped my water and leaned back. I didn't know memories came with reservation slips. Saad looked between us, tense, but I kept my tone calm. This wasn't a surprise. Dominic lived for moments like these. Aleena stepped forward, brushing her perfectly curled hair behind her ear. 1 crore, she said. I raised an eyebrow. For that table, she replied, voice cool. You can have your dinner somewhere else. Just not in our spot. A hush fell over nearby tables. Phones began to tilt ever so slightly, recording under napkins and handbags. Of course they'd pick a scene like this. A public triangle was social media gold. I tapped a few keys on my phone and placed my payment QR code on the table. Transfer it. Aleena blinked. Are you serious? You're the one who offered. Moments later, my phone vibrated. Transaction received. Indian rupee 1,000,000,000. Stood up, gestured for Saad to grab his drink, and moved to another table a few feet away, still with a great view. The waiter followed us politely, unfazed. Dominic looked smug. Aleena looked victorious. I just looked amused. I turned to Saad as we sat back down and said, loud enough for the phones to catch it, 1 crore for a table, I laughed. Imagine how much they'll pay to keep their secrets buried. Not every wound bleeds. Some just echo. It was ironic, really. The show I had auditioned for months ago, Harem, a lavish period drama with political intrigue and palace betrayals, had finally confirmed its cast. I'd landed the third male lead, a role that required charm, subtlety, and a sharp emotional range. Back then I was proud. It was the first role I'd earned on merit, without anyone's influence, not even Aleena's name behind me. But 2 days after the divorce, the production team announced a cast change. The male lead had been replaced by Dominic. Saad nearly dropped his phone when he read it. You're kidding. They're putting him opposite you? I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, a cold smile creeping onto my face. This wasn't the first time Dominic had stolen something from me. The memory came back uninvited. University. Drama Club's annual cultural event. We were cast in a dual lead performance, me and Dominic. The play was intense, emotional. There was one key scene where my character was to be slapped. We rehearsed the fake slap a dozen times. It was all choreographed, safe, controlled. But on the night of the performance, with an auditorium full of judges, students, and sponsors watching, Dominic turned his wrist and hit me. Not a stage slap, a real one. Loud, vicious, humiliating. I remember the sting, the heat that flared in my cheek, the gasp from the audience. But I stayed in character. I gritted my teeth and finished the scene. Later, at the after-party, Dominic laughed it off. Come on. It looked more realistic, didn't it? That's what matters, right? Everyone nodded awkwardly, trying not to offend Aleena, who had shown up in a shimmering dress clinging to Dominic's arm. She didn't even glance my way. That slap never faded. Not on my cheek. Not in my memory. Back in the present, Saad looked worried. You're still going to do the show? I nodded. Yeah. Let's see how Dominic handles a scene where he's not the star anymore. I picked up the revised script. My character now had more confrontations with Dominic's. More power plays. More tension. I wasn't backing down. I hope Dominic likes realism, I said, tossing the script on the table. Because this time, I'm not faking anything. Destiny never knocks. It crashes. The morning was quiet on set, eerily so. We had finished 3 scenes before noon. Dominic had barely looked in my direction during filming, even though our characters were now locked in a web of dramatic tension. I didn't mind. The less I saw of his smug face, the better. After the last take, I sat in the shade, sipping cold coffee, flipping through the script. Saad walked up, phone in hand, face pale. Raheel, it happened. I blinked. What? Aleena. Car crash. Just now. Front end crushed. She's in emergency surgery. It's bad. I closed the script slowly. So the plot was catching up. In the original novel, this accident was the turning point, the moment when the female lead loses everything. Her health, her image, her fiancé. And the old Raheel? He dropped everything to care for her, cooked for her, sat by her hospital bed, begged her not to give up. But this wasn't that story anymore. As the news spread, production slowed. Dominic vanished after a brief phone call, supposedly rushing to the hospital. I knew he'd make a performance out of it, crying outside the emergency room, holding her hand for the cameras. It wouldn't last. That evening, the news went public. Heiress Aleena injured in car accident, condition critical. The photos were dramatic: a wrecked luxury car, red-stained asphalt, and blurry images of Dominic shielding his face from the flashbulbs. Social media exploded with sympathy and speculation. Prayers for Aleena, folded hands. Domi won't leave her, I know it. Their love is real. If he stays by her, I swear I'll believe in love again. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, half a mango in my mouth, scrolling through the circus. The same people who called me a leech last week were now idolizing the man who once ran at the first sign of trouble. My phone buzzed. A known number. I answered. "Where the hell have you been?" a voice snapped. It was Monica, Aleena's mother. "You need to be at the hospital in 30 minutes. Now." I stared at the wall for a second, then smiled coldly. "I'm not on call anymore, Mrs. Monica." She hissed. "Don't forget, you owe Aleena everything." "No. I gave her everything," I said, picking up my keys. "And now I'm here to take it all back. What people post online, and what they whisper in the dark, those are never the same." Dominic's statement dropped like a bomb the next morning. A glossy photo of him holding Aleena's hand in the hospital bed was posted to his official account, along with a caption that read, "In sickness or in health, I'm staying with her. No matter what." The comment section turned into a shrine. "Domi is a real man," loudly crying face 2 hearts. "I wish someone loved me like this. He's not like other actors. He's loyal." I stared at the screen blankly, watching my public image sink deeper while Dominic's halo grew brighter. It was all a game to him: image, sympathy, relevance. He wasn't staying because of love. He was staying because Aleena still had shares in her family business. For now. A knock sounded on my trailer door. It was Dominic. He stepped inside with his usual smile, but there was tension under his skin, like he knew I could see through it all. "You must have expected me to run," he said, voice low, mock sincerity coating every word. "Sorry to disappoint you." I leaned back in my chair. "And here I thought you were busy being a hero." He narrowed his eyes. "I'm staying with Aleena. That's what real men do. Right?" I nodded. "And how many shares did Monica promise you in exchange?" His smile wavered. I stood up slowly. "Don't worry. I'm not going to tell anyone. Not yet. But remember something, Dominic. When Aleena's grip on Lynn Group starts slipping, so will yours." He looked away, guilt flickering across his face, or maybe just fear of getting caught. "If you truly love her," I said, "then ignore everything I just said." He turned to leave, lips pressed in a thin line. As he reached the door, I added, "But if you're faking it, start preparing. Because when she breaks, you'll be right under the spotlight." He said nothing and walked out. Later that day, Aleena called me. Her voice was soft, trembling. "Raheel, do you still remember the way I used to make porridge?" I said nothing, because I remembered. But I had no intention of going back. They say villains die in shadows. But this time I got the spotlight. Aleena's voice still echoed in my mind hours after I hung up. "Do you still remember the way I used to make porridge?" It wasn't really about porridge. It was about the past, about comfort, about control. She was trying to reach the Raheel who used to wait at her bedside, spoon in hand, with food she'd refuse to eat and tears he'd pretend not to cry. But that Raheel was gone. And even if he were still here, she didn't deserve him. The days that followed were quiet for me, but the world around us was screaming. Dominic was caught in a hotel scandal with a rising actress. The paparazzi released audio of him laughing at Aleena's condition during a private dinner. That cripple? I should have left her the day I came back. The internet flipped. Brand deals dropped him overnight. The same fans who once called him the definition of loyalty now flooded his posts with vomit emojis and hashtags like #DominicExposed and #Justice for Aleena. Meanwhile, Aleena was spiraling. Her shares in Lin Group were quietly taken over by senior executives during a shareholder vote she wasn't even invited to attend. Rumors swirled. She'd lost more than her leg. She'd lost her voice in the company, her control, and whatever dignity she'd clung to. She drank. A lot. And then, she didn't wake up. I read the headline on my phone one morning just before heading to the awards ceremony. Former heiress Aleena Lin found unresponsive in apartment. Her phone had dozens of unanswered calls to one number. You're not him. Where's my Raheel? I just want to talk to him again. But she never did. That night, I stood under stage lights, tux pressed, golden trophy in my hand. Best Supporting Actor. Funny title for someone who had never truly been the lead in his own life. Until now. As I looked out over the crowd, the applause felt distant. I checked my phone during the after-party, almost out of habit. One new comment on a fan forum. Username, Raheel. Thank you. For freeing me. I smiled faintly. I didn't reply. I just whispered to myself one last time, I wasn't the hero. But the story was mine.